The work that we do at Fathers Network comes from the work that Mark started doing 12 years or so ago, speaking about the impact on fathers. Our training that we deliver, some of it is ingrained in the work that Mark's done. I'm very fortunate to call him a very good friend of mine. And when I first started doing this work, he was a bit of a mentor. And if nothing else, and I say this with the utmost respect, he taught me maybe the mistakes not to make. And within those mistakes is to make sure you safeguard yourself when you're dealing with people that are obviously having difficult times, and making time to sort of decompress and switch off. And in the beginning, he was always there for me to speak to and offload to. So he talks a lot about fathers' mental health, but it's not just something that he talks about. It's actually something that he practices quite a lot. And I won't go into too much more details of. Hand over to Mark to talk. Mark, I've made you co-host if you want to share any slides. If not, you just do what you want.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thanks, Scott. That's I feel a bit gone red now. Actually, after that, but yeah, no, it's like I said, Scott. Obviously, he's been a good friend of me over the years, and it only spoke to him on Monday, you know, because obviously I get overwhelmed. ADHD, diagnosed with ADHD at 40 years of age. So I don't know if anyone knows my background, and obviously, you know, from a child in the valleys community, very much, you know, my father was a miner, my grandfather's, all my family were miners. I'm the first generation not actually to go underground. So in my community, it's very much like, you know, a great father, but in case, you know, if there's a problem, let's go to the pub, you know, let's go and have a pint sort of thing, you know. So I created different negative coping skills over the years. I struggled in school massively. Only talking about it today, I think, you know, a lot of people go through traumatic experiences in school, especially in the 80s when, you know, you get a clip across the ear and ballroom busters. You know, I can't keep still now, but certainly in the 80s, you know, there was no awareness of neurodiversity. So, you know, obviously after that obviously a youth club helped me as a child, and I stand on his ME, 50 odd years voluntary, and he was my mentor really, and he said you can do anything with your life. And I was proud to be a British champion. And then the Ibiza scene started kicking in, and then in 1990, and then unfortunately I went down a different path, you know, for 6 years. I always say to Scott and other people, you know, probably see me on Ibiza and covered somewhere with my glow sticks, you know, that sort of thing. But I'm proud to say that that's 6 years, and I don't talk about much. My wife knows a lot, and all my friends, but, you know, I lost so much weight, drugs, amphetamines, alcohol, loads of things, or PRN drugs, or diazepam, all things. And I think, and I know Christine's talking about substance abuse and different things. What I'm learning now more about ADHD, there's a lack of efficiency in dopamine. And obviously, you know, to get that high, you know, you need some sort of buzz sometimes. You know, it needs a gambling. You see, look at prison services. There's so many people undiagnosed with ADHD. I'm not blaming ADHD on the thing, but, you know, certainly want to know about ADHD now. I'm very addictive. I throw myself in. I hyper-focus on things I enjoy. And that's something we need to learn in school as well. Not everyone goes down the same path. You know what I mean? And, you know, I always recommend you look at Sir Ken Robinson's TEDx talk, the most talked TEDx talk ever. He was a school specialist, and he explains about creative and ADHD and other things as well. So, you know, that side of it, I'm passionate about with young people as well, you know, very passionate about young people. So, yeah, so that's basically my childhood, really. But it was obviously after a traumatic birth. Obviously, witnessing my wife go through a traumatic birth really changed my life then as well, massively. Do you want me to carry on, Scott? You okay? Yeah, just carry on. So like I said, so basically what happened after 22 hours labour, my wife obviously went to theatre, and I remember the doctors before that saying to me, Mr. Williams, your wife needs emergency C-section. We need to get to theatre quick. And it's the first time and only time I actually had a panic attack. And, you know, never experienced a panic attack in my life before. And I felt really guilty, you know, the attention's on me and it should be on my wife, Michelle, you know. And then obviously I went to theatre then, obviously, you know, what you see in the theatre, but then, you know, you have this little baby, and then never had a little baby in my life before, you know. And then obviously I had to go and take him and get weighed, and I thought I was going to drop him. And then, you know, expecting the three of us to leave that day, because I thought, oh, cut the baby's cord and off you go and everything's great, but it went simple as that for us. And Michelle was on a ward 3 days, Then in that 3 days, she went very unwell to the point where she wouldn't let me go. I put it down with tiredness. And then when she came home then after the emergency C-section or Cap 1, basically things escalated. And when my wife was obviously diagnosed severely with post-depression because she tried to take her life by suicide. And I was expecting to go back and work in 2 weeks. I was self-employed at the time, so there was no money coming in, mortgage to pay, all those things going on. And then isolation, loneliness, because I used to enjoy my job, the social side of my job. And then, I was, 20 years ago nearly now, it's totally changed. My wife was on a ward with people with bipolar, schizophrenia. She was the only mum on the ward. She didn't stay on the ward. We made an agreement that she could come home with the baby and stuff like that. But, seeing her dropping off on the ward and different things. And I was so uneducated about mental health. Somebody coming in here as well. I was so uneducated about mental health massively. And, my personality totally changed in that postnatal period, totally changed massively. So I was started drinking more, avoiding situations, remember my mother-in-law came to live with us and a lot of family support where a lot of families haven't got that support. And, I ended up in Swansea in a casino in Swansea, and people say, where's Mark too? And all those things going on. So there's a lot of things happening because I presented differently. I became really unwell. Thoughts of suicide were at 4 months mark. Never made a plan to take my life. But it was a case of I started again so paranoid, thinking my wife and baby would be better off without me. I couldn't provide my family anymore because that's something I was taught for my fathers. You provide and put food on the table, that sort of mentality as well. And so there's so much going on in a short space of time, really. So, I witnessed a traumatic birth. My wife had tried to take her life by suicide. I was struggling. And I always say to people, when you think of thoughts and feelings of postnatal depression, in mums, guilt not good enough, struggle to bond, there's not one that dads can't experience either. I didn't get this overwhelming feeling for my son initially. I realized that I was so just relieved they were okay. And I didn't have a chance to process everything that went on as well. So there was so much going on. I remember punching the sofa, busting my hand 4 months in. I was, when I did manage to get out with my friends, it sounds really silly, but I started fighting with bouncers. It's not because I wanted to I would never beat them up or nothing, but it was a case when somebody was hitting me, it was like a release, a form of self-harm sort of thing. It was taking my mind away from things and I wanted to be hurt. And so it just escalated and to a point where the benefits what came out of that 6 months when I was home with no money, obviously I was self-employed. And it's crazy, I only changed from being self-employed only a couple of weeks before, because I wanted to spend more time with my son and have more flexibility as well, So there's no money coming in, but I was lucky that my manager was self-employed with his son was in the armed forces and he had PTSD and he was living. So he had a good understanding of mental health. And he said, Mark, take as much time off you want. Don't worry about that. You're not getting paid anyway, sadly, but you take as much time as you want off. And so John Reese was amazing. And so after that, then things, obviously Michelle became well, better, I should say. And we had a good CPN nurse. So Gail James was our CPN nurse. And Gail James went on to set up NHS Prams, which was the first service in Wales for specialist perinatal mental health team prams. So a lot of good things came out of something bad than Gail. Obviously Michelle, really, I'm thankful for as well. So I struggled. I wasn't the same person going back into my job in sales then. I couldn't take the pressures anymore like I could have done before. And I started volunteering at my youth club and to change my career. I wasn't the same person. I was very much, I've never been really interested in material stuff. It's all about experiences for me. But when I had a company car, a new house, we moved, we come back where I'm living now, back to the community. Money, obviously we had debt, obviously during that time because of credit cards and stuff. But I changed my outlook on money and everything. I thought when, you're so unwell and you think, gosh, you're not going to be here anymore, life changes prospectively. And so I changed my career. I went into youth work to go back to the club that helped me as a child. And that's when the journey started in mental health, really, because unfortunately, as Jamie will know, and a lot of people know, there was a Bridgend suicides. I don't know if anyone knows about the Bridgend suicides. It was a big media storm in 2007, 2008. So it was higher population of people dying, young people dying by suicide. And it wasn't just the town, it was actually the community, which is 130,000 people. But the press were saying horrible things about town, deaf town, suicide town, all this sort of thing, and really putting the community down sort of thing. So I started going on mental health courses, suicide assist courses, and mental health courses, and really starting to get an interest in it. Sorry guys, just to let you know, I have got 50 pence in a meter. It's just gone off my thing. Just so you know, it'll come back on. There you are. So, like I said, that was my journey really. So I started working in different projects with people with learning difficulties, mental health, and then working in forensic wards with people with from Broadmoor, Ashworth. We had a lot of patients coming from different areas from the NHS. And I really loved criminology. I love it still to this day. I love mental health. And I think the beauty of ADHD, you can hyper focus on things you really enjoy and be more creative, out the box thinking. And like you said, I never read a book until I was 22. I'll be honest, a whole book, I should say. I read Peter and Jane in school and stuff like that. But I used to pick a book up, 2 or 3 pages, and then, I've had enough, and then, lose concentration. But what I knew about the sales background, psychology, positive psychology, motivation, and different things, I was starting, it was like a sponge. So when I went into mental health, those transferable skills actually went with me then, like listening skills, communication skills, how to open up people in certain ways. And so we all got transferable skills on me really as well. And I think what really changed then, my story will get better, guys, just so you know. I lost my grandfather to dementia, which I was very close to my grandfather, and we cared for him right at the end. And obviously, sorry guys, take a breath. I lost my grandfather with dementia, and then my mother was diagnosed with cancer, but she's fine now. Within 6 weeks of each other, I thought I was going to lose my mother as well, and then everything just spiraled out of control. And I was physically fit at that time. I was doing a lot of kickboxing, just when it's over 35 kickboxing tournament. But mentally, it was impacting my physical health. And that's some things we got to look out for as well. Bowel movement, nausea, aches and pains. And I was physically fit. I was really fit at that time. But mentally, I was really unwell. And it really, I was avoiding situations again. I was starting to go up in the woods, sleep in a car up in Neath Valley. I know Jamie's on here in Neath, by the cycle tracks and stuff like that up there. And because I couldn't tell my wife how I was feeling, I couldn't just lay in bed because my wife would find out. I think depression made me the biggest liar ever. And because I didn't want to worry my wife anymore. And I had a breakthrough. I remember where I was that day. And my body just shut down, and I had no choice to get the help then. I used to worry about, if I went to the GP, it'd be on my notes and I would never get a job in mental health. All these things that obviously, it's a lot better, and there's more quality acts and stuff, reports out there now, discrimination acts and stuff. But I didn't know about all this stuff. So I was actually in community mental health teams then. And after 8 weeks recovery, I wasn't sectioned. It was no section 2 on me, nothing like that. But I was basically put on put medication counseling. I needed a medication really to function again, then so I could take the therapy in, and then slowly, gradually, I came off the medication. But I still went into community mental health teams because I knew people were telling me there was something extra. And I was actually diagnosed 3 years after that point with ADHD, 3 years after. And so it's funny because, 2.5 hour assessment with a psychiatrist, Dr. Davis, he was absolutely amazing. My wife was there. My mother came in a session, explaining what I was like in school and what I was like behaving and different things like that. And he was watching me as I was out the room. He was really one of the best. And he asked me, he said to me, can you do his test? And he said, I thought it was bipolar or something, if anything. And then he said, you've got ADHD. I was like, what? I said, I work with young people, I just didn't realize it's a disorder. A lot of people have had it over the years and didn't, and I know. So I was like, what? I was a big shock. And anyone who goes to diagnose, you start having these thoughts of guilt. And I was a father then, and you start looking at things differently. So prior to that, it was meeting a guy in a gym, actually, Brian. And we've lost Brian, sadly, only a couple of months ago. Brian was an amazing man. His wife had severe post-depression or birth trauma. And Brian lost his business, he lost his house, he lost everything. And he was a pastor. He's a pastor in our local church, actually, which is, and he went through 22 years of drugs and alcohol and all sorts of things. So he had, but he was, you know, he hadn't touched drugs for years. And I always remember speaking to him in the gym, and I said, can I bother weights? And he said, yeah, no worries. I got to go to NHS Prams, Brian said. And all I said to him was, what's NHS Prams? He said, oh, my wife's got post-depression. I said, no way. I said, my wife had post-depression too. No way. So all of a sudden, side by side, I probably told him more things I told the counsellor at the time, my wife, my family members, because I connected with Brian, because Brian was the first person I came across as a father who had similar experiences to me as well. So I came from there feeling great. So I set up a group called Fathers Reaching Out in Bridgend in the Ark. And it was nothing, no plan whatsoever to actually grow where it's gone now. It was basically to have a support group in Bridgend, and then if I help a couple of fathers, I feel better. I'll feel I've done something, you know, positive, out of something negative in my life. And so I put a newspaper article in my local gazette, and didn't realise at the time the local gazette shoots it out to national press, and all of a sudden it just escalated from there. Unintentionally, I was on BBC Breakfast Show, Good Morning Britain. You can imagine the stigma in post-depression fathers. 12, 13 years ago, 30 years. How come fathers get post-depression? And the amount of boost we had online, oh my gosh, you wouldn't believe it. But I knew I had to keep going, because the fathers were actually telling me things that, like, Scott knows Dr. Jane Hanley. You know, I met up with Dr. Jane Hanley, I think it's 2012, and she said, how do you know all this stuff about fathers? And I said, well, I'm talking to the fathers. They tell me everything, because I think they related to me, and, you know, I was listening, I was letting them speak, and they felt trust in me as well. And I think they were telling me, I've learned so much of parents over the years. I think that's still learning. Even last night, I was learning off some parents as well. So they were telling me intrusive thoughts that they were getting. They were saying that they weren't bonding. They were using alcohol, drugs. Relationships were breaking down. And then it was interlinking with other services, like, for instance, Fathers for Justice, Matt O'Connor, Both Parents Matter. Obviously, I done some work with Paul, Both Parents Matter, because some of the fathers were so unwell at the time, and they were presenting as they didn't want to be involved with their children, but they were getting intrusive thoughts. They were bathing a baby, and they were having flashbacks because abuse happened to them in the bath. So there was always a reason behind the father's behaviour, why you were behaving. Even dads with intrusive thoughts, the paedophiles, they won't change a nappy, what they call maternal or paternal OCD, checking the baby, won't let anyone touch the baby. We know it's with mums. Of course, everything we know with mums can happen with dads. And also, we broke down the barriers then when, like, for instance, everyone used to say to me, Mark, how can fathers get postnatal depression? It's hormones. That's all it was. Hormones, postnatal depression. Because that's all it was years ago. It wasn't so much perinatal mental health then. It was always just postnatal depression or baby blues. So obviously, as we know now, fathers' biological risk factors, testosterone, estrogen, cortisol levels, vasopressin, oxytocin, obviously that lowers during fatherhood as well. So there's a biological risk factors that comes with that as well for fathers. But when you look at the bigger risk factors, we know past history. So I'm witnessing a traumatic birth is huge for fathers. What we know now, a lot of mums will have birth trauma, but also that can develop into a PTSD as well. And dads are witnessing that. And also, as we know, PTSD is an anxiety disorder, either witnessing or experiencing a life-threatening event. That's what PTSD is. Nothing worse thinking your wife is going to die in a labour ward, for me and a lot of fathers. And I've witnessed horrific things in secure units. Even loads of things. Still to this day, thinking your wife and baby is going to die for me and a lot of fathers, I felt helplessness. I couldn't process what was going on. And it was only a couple of years ago, actually, when somebody was mentioning it, I thought I dealt with it. I couldn't remember how I got the hospital and everything, because it was something triggered on my mind. And I spoke to Jane about it at the time, and some of the stress, something like that, was extreme. And but I think how I've processed it as well, because I'm not going to have any more children, unfortunately. I'm not going to go into labour ward again. And that's really sad, really, because a lot of fathers may want more children and they're not getting the support in place. I've had the old operation, guys, the old, what us men go through, guys. Honestly, gosh, that's another story. But on a serious note, we did want more children before that happened. We did, you know. Obviously, I thought that, you know, put you off sex with your partner. I didn't want Michelle to be pregnant again because I didn't want to go for a trauma. I didn't want to go. So then, because of lack of communication between each other, you know, mum was overthinking, is anything done? Just new baby, body image. I'm overthinking, is it me? Anything? I don't want sex with my partner. And then you're not talking to each other then. And obviously that can develop problems in relationships as well. As happens, you won't believe this. When I was coming up with the operation, I just thought this actually, who was the first person I was going to meet? Was Gail James, the lady CPN nurse when I was working like John Wayne. So I thought I'd bring that up. I got to make light of it, guys, because it is a serious topic, I know, but it's, and the one person actually after my full diagnosis of ADHD, because I was nearly diagnosed with bipolar when I went back to see another psychiatrist because my doctor left at that time. And after retirement, and I'm bipolar, and I was doing a talk up in North Wales. And this lady said to me, I've got ADHD, Mark. And I said, how do you know that? She said, I'm a specialist with adults and children. So I went back to community mental health teams with Zoe Piper, who had ADHD, and we educated. I had the final stamp, as they say. And when I came out of the hospital, I'm not sure if I told Scott this, when I came out, me and Zoe came out down the hospital, and who should I meet? It was my PE teacher, Mr. John. I said, Mr. John, and he was having his urine test. And I said, Mr. John, I've got ADHD. And he said, Williams, I got it told you 30 years ago. I said, oh, thank you very much for that. So, like you said, you know, the reason why I bring up ADHD, because there's a lot of neurodiversity. There's a lot of fathers struggling with their mental health who have got ADHD. There's a lot of fathers who are witnessing traumatic births. There's a crossover. A lot of mums get diagnosed with post-depression, like Michelle, severe post-depression. But when I was unwell, Michelle's depression came back. Unfortunately, she was back in crisis team. And she was really unwell. This is the thing with suicide. It's not like Michelle didn't want to be here at all. It's not like that. And the same as me when I look at it. I had a wonderful family. I had a wonderful people and things to do. It's just every day, you don't know how to cope and navigate that support. You don't know how you're going to go for another day, having these feelings and thoughts and all that. So it's not like people want to kill. It's just they can't, you know, they can't live in that moment and constantly like, where your mind's constantly racing and thoughts and all that. It's just aggravating. And with ADHD, I have my days, of course, like anyone else, burn out, but nothing like the 13 years ago when I was really unwell. I've never had days like that. That was like a totally different person, as well as I have been in previous years. That person, I can't relate to that person. And so I'm glad I had a breakdown, because looking back, I was so paranoid. I think I always say my son really saved me as well, because I just like, I didn't want to, obviously, yeah, it was other things going on. But I'm going off tangent a bit, sorry guys. I'm just thinking that thing. It makes you think, really, all these fathers really struggling for a range of reasons, and there's no support in place as much as it should be. It's getting better. So from a positive side, I call it post-traumatic growth. My wife went on, because the company who she worked for, and I'm allowed to say it because I will say British Gas, the way they treated her, for all the loyalty she had for 13 years where she worked there. She was amazing, never took a day off. She was really good at her job. And when you got management saying to her, well, the things they're saying, that because she was really unwell, employers need to learn about this stuff. And they really need to learn this stuff. Mums going back for various reasons, and dads, they're more productive if they need to be educated. Employers need to be educated more, because Centre of British Gas, you can cut this out, guys, if you don't mention British Gas. But I was really angry the way they talked to my wife about, saying things like, are you going to kill yourself tomorrow? Are you going to do this? Why can't you do your job anymore? And she was severely unwell, for the second time. So, I always say that early prevention starts in pregnancy. If we can get it right, when both parents are supported for their mental health, it has far better outcomes for the whole family and the child's development. Because if we don't include dad, somewhere along that family timeline, something may happen, I should say. It affects, so I'm quite evidence that they're saying that, a lot of things have happened in my life when it could have been early prevented now, as well. I was never diagnosed with PTSD. Chemotherapy would have said, and I've had people said it, or post-depression, I would say. I was diagnosed with ADHD. as well. So there's a lot of fathers not even diagnosed with ADHD. They get diagnosed with depression, which is a big umbrella, and anxiety, I should say. It's a big umbrella. A lot of people go, oh, I got anxiety, okay. Have you heard of time anxiety, guys? Time anxiety, I was doing a talk today, time anxiety. So time anxiety, I give it a quick one. Who's always late? Who's always late? Always late? Yeah. Yeah. And who's got a partner who has to be there all the time?
Me. I am that one.
Yeah. So time, when you think as parents, you don't get a lot of time, do you? But some people have to be on time, and we've got a partner who's always late, like my wife. She's downstairs. So there's conflict there, and I'm constantly, hurry up, come on. I'm looking at the clock constantly all the time. I've got to be there at work. I've got to be there. And then, your relationship. So time anxiety is something we don't talk about enough as well. And it does happen to a lot of people. I've had fathers and men work. I've got a friend down the road, actually. He's constantly looking at the time all the time. Sorry for the pun, but he was constantly looking at the time. And he's looking, when he's driving, I do it. He's measuring, okay, 5 minutes I get to there. So it's time, it's depth anxiety. There's loads of things out there. OCD is an anxiety disorder. PTSD is an anxiety disorder. You've got generalized anxiety disorders. So you've got all these multiple things, but a lot of people, fathers, will get diagnosed with anxiety. So they don't get the root cause sometimes as well. So, shall I carry on, guys? I'm enjoying it better. You okay? Are you all right? I'm not boring you now, right? No? It's good. So the research, like I said, when I started doing the work then, obviously, I realized then there's no mention of fathers on CG 192 NICE guidelines. So there's 47 pages for mums for antenatal and postnatal specialist pathways, but there's nothing on fathers still today, unless it changed last week. The biggest killer in men, as we know, is suicide under 45, yeah? But when you look at the Embrace report for mums, it's actually one of the leading causes of death, suicide, as a new mum, yeah? So when you look at the research we found now, and Bernardo's, I've got to tell you this, Bernardo's, I went to Google, because there's a piece coming out on the weekend for Wales online, about up to 47, so a dad is up to 47 times more risk of suicide, a new dad is, than any other time in a man's life. It's normally 5%, but then it shoots up then, because if you've got other like trauma or ADHD or bipolar schizophrenia, it actually shoots up, so it comes up to 47 times more risk, but 5%. And when you look at the embryo with new mums, of course, a lot of these fathers end up dying by suicide and never diagnosed with post-depression or PTSD, because we're not screening and assessing dads like we should. We don't even, me and Scott did a report, 80% of dads wasn't even asked once about their mental health. So we're still a long way to go. So once we start screening, getting this started in place as well, and which I'll have some good news about that as well, because hopefully this university is going to trigger this data as well. Then we'll realize that there's so many fathers who we can prevent from dying by suicide, because obviously if we screen and assess dads, you only got to look with dads who are unable to see their children, parental alienation. I've seen it from the mother's side as well, where mum was really unwell, very unwell. I was an advocate in hospital, and she had a horrific time, and she was in secure units and all sorts of things. And nobody asked after third child that she had PTSD and she couldn't see her children. The father took custody, and obviously, she's never been able to see all the children. But this is happening for fathers as well. So it does, and I've seen it interlink with the organizations I told you about, like Fathers for Justice and Both Parents Matter and those sort of organizations. So there is links. So if we can early prevent it in the antenatal period, perinatal, or the first 1,001 critical days, but I like to say the antenatal period, because we know it's used to be a lot high risk of domestic violence as well during pregnancy. I think it's still the same. Why is this happening? Is it because a father had a previous experience from another time? Is it we need to start looking why this is happening? And when it comes to domestic violence, as you know, guys, a lot of fathers are not asked about domestic violence themselves. Sometimes they said to go into the room, and then that goes to pillow talk. Your dad will find out. So sometimes it can be a barrier. You only got to look at Mankind's website. There's high rates. And when postpartum rage with mums, we know when postpartum rage with mums, of course, dads can have our postpartum rage as well. as well. You know, you've got a mum with pillar psychosis, postpartum psychosis, or severely unwell, and you know, loads of things that father's got to deal with, which you need support for as well. So yeah, so going back to like I mentioned, you know, we have to start having that conversation and include fathers. And Scott would know, I'm not all fathers. I'm an ambassador for Two Mothers Charities. Actually, it was the first one to campaign for the Mother and Baby Unit in South Wales, which has come back. It's actually in Tonna now, Jamie, as well. After 7 years, when Welsh Government said there was no need for one, and all the mums going up to Bristol and all sorts of things. So when you think of ODD, guys, I was having this chat with Scott as well. It does interlink with ADHD, is very anti-authoritative. But I feel that in a way, I look at it, well, it's black and white for me. That's wrong. And I just need to shout out about it. So it's not like I'm being anti-authoritative people or organizations say, no, if it's wrong, it's wrong. And I'm very anti-authoritative in that way. So that's something else I'm looking into ODD as well. I don't think we know about ODD. It does interlink with ADHD as well.
Sorry, Mair, I was just going to ask.
Sorry, guys, we go on.
Just explain what ODD is.
Yeah, so some of the symptoms like frustration, anger, anti-authoritative. It's I can see the name now. It's the same as ADHD, deficit. You know, when I look at ADHD as a deficit disorder, it's only I got so much attention when I'm focused on something I enjoy. So I think that needs to get away. You know, a deficit. What's it? Attention deficit. When I'm really interested in something, I got so much attention. It's got to stimulate me. If it stimulates me, then I'm fully attention. I got your attention. So it's like tonight now. If I was talking about Harry Potter or something like that, I'd probably be looking over here. You know, it's got to interest me. But ODD is more like I can never pronounce this, guys. So it's a good question. It's more like anti-authoritative behavior, aggressive.
It's oppositional defiant disorder.
That's it.
So they don't like to be told what to do. So children find school and stuff quite difficult, which is what you've already described. Yeah, exactly. And I listen all day. You know, I do listen. I take on advice and all that. But if I think I'm right, and I think something's going to harm somebody or something like that, I get it. Well, you know, Scott knows about me. So I'm like, no, that's wrong. That's wrong. And I can put my head above the parrot pit a bit. That makes sense. I am going off on tangent tonight, guys. It's not structured talk tonight, and that's some part of the ADHD as well. Do you want to ask me any questions? Do you want me to open up a bit, or if I? Yeah, I'm going to ask a question before anybody else jumps in. I'd like you to explain. Obviously, next week is International Father's Mental Health Day. How did you come about the idea, and how did you turn it from an idea to now something that's got global partners all around the world?
Yeah. So I was coming from a conference in London, and I seen Happy Wine Day, Happy Donut Day on the train. I always remember this. I thought, hang on, International Father's Mental Health Day. So just an idea in 2016, and I thought, well, hang on, let's have it the day after Father's Day, because not every father is happy on the Monday, and you know, and so it was, as you know, with the media, especially this week, you know, it's very much around Father's Day, and you know, and I thought it's a good time to actually get some awareness and understanding education out there. So it was an idea, and then the year later, then I got in touch with Dr. Daniel Singley, who does a lot of work in California. So I needed to make it more of a global day. So he came on board, and then we started getting like a couple of partners, and like Bronwyn in Australia. We got Andy Mair's, James on board, a couple of doctors. Got Ines in Africa, and then we got our organization. In fact, sadly this year, because I think we haven't really, it's been so busy, like everyone else is busy. We've got more organizations on board, but more next year want to be involved as well. So we've got about over 30, 40 maybe organizations from Australia, America, obviously Fathers Network Scotland on board. So there's more and more going to come on next year. But it was just an idea. It was just an idea, and I think it's going to grow hopefully over the next couple of years when we talk about fathers' mental health more as well. And it's actually a recognised day now on the Time to Change mental health calendar, which was good as well. That was good. So, and the reason why I said that, because this is not just a UK concern. it's actually a global concern because the World Health Organization has nothing on paternal depression. It has on maternal depression, but nothing on. So we got over 700,000 male suicide recorded worldwide. That's recorded suicide. A lot of men would smash their cars up, not from the act of suicide, but from other ways, alcohol, whatever, because of stigma around suicide and insurance and also family stigma and different things. So we know it's far higher. But then the World Health Organization, sorry guys, I shouldn't laugh. I think in 2023, gosh, come on, it's, fathers, we can see it when you support all parents for their mental health. I get frustrated because, but on the other side, I know personally that next 5 years, we're going to have it started, we're going to have all this information, we're going to have more research, and next 10 years, I know for a fact, because we've got to look how mums have changed in the last 10 years. Because when I was on the board with the Maternal Mental Health Alliance in 2012, there was only about 20 odd of us around the table. They were going for COVID relief funding, and they were responsible for all the specialist services we got in the UK now in the Maternal Mental Health Alliance. Dr. Gregoire and all the professors. So, I did get a bit imposter syndrome, to be honest. It's funny when you have professors asking me about fathers. I think, gosh, you're the professor, you should know this, But what I realized is that, it's like a sponge. I learn off of fathers, I learn off of mothers. I speak to more mums sometimes than dads. That's sometimes a way to get to the dads for me. And I'm still learning. Even last night, I learned about something I never thought about before with one dad. So it's a global concern. It's not just a UK concern. It's a global concern. And that's something we've had touch with World Health Organization, but I know it's starting. I believe it's going to get there in the end as well. So yeah, International Father Mental Health, just an idea, guys. That's all it was as well. No funding, no money, just make it happen. Same as a film. I got a film, Daddy Blues, on Amazon Prime. Cost £1,000 to make. We got Dad Pad as a sponsor. We all did it for free. And it's on Amazon Prime. It's called Daddy Blues. It's just a perspective of, it's a PG version of my story, obviously, but it's just using things that, and I think as a youth worker from Stan Norris, who used to make things from a mine, he's work in a pit and then come to the youth club, and we didn't have no money in the community. Used to make things out of anything, like things used to take from the pits, marbles, or used to create things for the kids out of nothing. So I think Stan used to say to me, he said, Mark, if you want something bad, you'll find a way to do it. And things like I always stick to you. And the things, what does stick to me, and I've got over now, is when a teacher told me that I would never do anything with my life and you'll never get a job. And when I had a window cleaning round and a paper round, and I just become a champion, So you start questioning authority then. So go back to the ODD. Hang on, you didn't get to know me. How do you know what I'm like? Just because I'm looking a bit scruffy, whatever, a scruffy kid or whatever, get to know me first. Maybe you might, might find someone else. But I'm all right with that now because teachers didn't know about ADHD. They didn't know. I'm all right with it as well. So there's a lot of skill sets in neurodiversity as well.
I've got a question, Mark. What do you think? So I didn't know anything about postnatal depression in dads, and I was working for Dad's organization when I first met you. So you took me on a journey, and you must have been absolutely pivotal, I think, in raising awareness, absolutely pivotal in the country in raising awareness. And I want to thank you first off and just say a huge thanks for all that you've done. But I'm wondering what the biggest positive change that you've seen in all of that time that you've been campaigning and working in the field. What's the biggest positive thing that you've seen?
Do you know what, Kathy just made me, I remember when I was in that talk in Holyrood with the tall guy, Armed Forces.
Dave Devaney.
Dave and, gosh.
Chris.
And I remember Dave, and they didn't know about post-depression, did they? And it was like, yeah. And then Dave told me about a story about somebody he knew. And he was like, oh my gosh, yeah, I get it. Like, I remember that time in Holyrood. But going back, I think the biggest change is obviously changing the long-term plan where, me and Andy had a message of NHS that fathers will be screen assessed for their mental health in England. But that's only if mum's in special services, which was a great start, and it's got the conversation. But you know, we should be screen assessing all dads really. And the other thing which come up now are really proactive is a dads group. I'm trying to get involved with it. You know, it's all time. I think the awareness. I just think that when I was 13 years ago, when people were saying, "How can men get postnatal depression?" I don't get the abuse like that anymore. Like I don't know if Scott had, but because people understand it, get it. There's no laughter now, but it was laughter, to be honest. You know, it was. And so I think on the back of men's mental health as well, and obviously the Maternal Mental Health Alliance, I think men are starting to realise talking more about their mental health. So I've seen a big difference in 6 years, more media attention, more people talking. Obviously, you've got the celebrities coming out and all the other people coming out. But I think I've seen a big difference when I first started 13 years ago, and I've seen it even, you know, big difference. And so I think men's mental health, fathers' mental health is just going to grow and grow and grow and grow now. So yeah, it's good. I think it's good. I think it's yeah, a bit of a journey, but it's been great. Like, to be honest, now I won't go back. Gosh, the amount of work. Oh, and I'm not just saying this. My wife deserves every medal, because she's seen me when I've been obsessed on social media, you know, going up to Scotland, you know, and all the other stuff, and on megabuses, working a 12-hour shift in the hospital, going back up on media station, doing coaching, football coaching, youth work, yeah, but yeah, I think it's been all worth it. And I think, like I said, again, Scott on board, and I spoke to Scott a couple of years ago. I'll be honest with you, it was a time I thought I can't do anymore, and Scott said, like, you know, for instance, he called me Pep, and I was, what's the other one who, oh gosh, we had a little joke, the Arsenal manager. I needed somebody to pass it on, if that makes sense, if I was going to finish, because I didn't want to just leave it there, you know, because I've come across a lot of fathers who've done amazing work as well, and I've helped them. There's a guy called Tony Crone, Liverpool, and he had a lot of abuse online and different things, and he just couldn't do it anymore. There's a couple of other people over the years as well. Ross Hunt, spoke to them, and it, you know, and yeah, it's been a lot of fathers who just can't do it anymore. And I think burnout. I've been burned up a lot over the years, so I needed somebody like Scott, and Scott's been a really good friend, and obviously he's motivated me actually in COVID and other stuff to keep a flag flying, sort of thing, you know, as well. So, but I am interested in other things like neurodiversity now, and I think it's good really, because when I'm bored and I'm trying to think of something else to do, I can switch my hat then and do a bit of that, and vice versa as well, you know. So it does work better. But I'm deep down, I'm passionate about, I don't want anyone to go through what me and Michelle went through, and that'll always be the case, like, you know.
I have a bit of a follow-on question as well, but I don't want to hog the question time with you, Mark. So
as long as everyone's all right,
please do. Shut me up. But I've got another question, and I suppose it's a bit of a follow-on about what you think is still outstanding. What would you want to click your fingers? What are those things that you want to click your fingers and have improved for dads and mums and whole families?
Yeah, just get engage with dad. A service where we got a proper pathway, so health professionals can really engage with dad. I think that's stopping a lot of health professionals. Where do you put dad if he struggles with mental health? So nice guidelines. I like to see, it's all about money, I know, but when you look at the economic reports and stuff, the costs, you know, adverse child experiences, there's loads of things it interlinks with, you know, it interlinks with. So I've seen it, like, you know. So screen assess and support all parents for their mental health. It has far better outcomes for the whole family and the child's development. That's always been my message. Parents as well. So if nobody was shouting for mums 13 years ago and everyone shouted for dads, I'd probably be more known for maternal mental health now.